Monkey.
Now, Gervonta Tank Davis and Devin Haney were trading words. Now, I'm just going to read out what they say, and I'm going to try to put, the conversations on screen for you guys to see. And then I'll just give my thoughts on, both Gervonta Tank Davis and Devin Haney and what I think about both fighters and the situation. So, some guy says that every day Devin Haney's swag starts to look more like Gervonta Davis. And Gervonta Davis responds by saying, he wanna be me so bad. Some guy says to Devin Haney, you need to fight Tank. And then Devin Haney responds and says, he never gonna fight nobody. He 27 with a Mickey Mouse belt, and the best person on his resume is Pedraza. Gervonta Tank Davis then responds, why they paying me 5 times more than you, like I have all the belts? But I'm just going to skip over the next few words. And another thing, stop trying to be me, chump. The people starting to notice. Now, if I have to give my brutally honest thoughts on Gervonta Tank Davis and Devin Haney and their careers. Devin Haney is 23 years old and Gervonta Tank Davis is 27 years old. Devin Haney at 23 years old has undoubtedly achieved more than Tank Davis. And there's no question that Gervonta Tank Davis is a phenomenal fighter. He has the punching power to KO Devin Haney, but Devin Haney himself is very slick and he's very hard to hit. So it would make for a fascinating fight. Now, in terms of resume, I wouldn't say either of the fighters are worlds apart. Tank has beaten guys like Pedraza, Isaac Cruz, Rolly Romero, Mario Barrios, and Gamboa. Those are his top wins. Now, I'd say for Devin Haney, his top wins are Jorge Linares, George Kambosos, Gamboa, Zayul Abdullayev, and Jojo Diaz. So for me, their resume, is virtually neck on neck. It's very similar, but just in terms of accomplishments and considering that Devin Haney is, several years younger than Gervonta Tank Davis, I'd have to give Devin Haney the edge and say, well, Devin Haney has definitely done more in a shorter time frame than Tank Davis. Tank Davis's career has definitely not progressed as fast as Devin Haney's. Now, whilst Gervonta Tank Davis said, well, they're paying me 5 times more than you, I think we should give Devin Haney credit in the aspect that Devin Haney took a lowball offer to make the undisputed fight against George Kambosos. He allowed George Kambosos to have the lion's share, the bulk of the money, in order to have his opportunity of being undisputed. And I would say in Devin Haney's next 2-3 fights, he'll be getting paid a significantly more amount of money than he has been gotten paid, in his most recent fights. And that's because he now has the belts and he's not locked in a long-term contract with, Top Rank and George Kambosos, and he can call the shots. Now in terms of Devin Haney trying to be like Gervonta Tank Davis, I'm not really going to comment on that because I'm not really interested. I don't really care if they both like the same type of things. They both, if they wear similar clothing, they both like jewelry. There's nothing wrong with that. So, that's not of significance to me. Tank Davis did post something on his Instagram where he just said December. So that suggests that he might have an up-and-coming fight in December. Now, who that fight will be against? Now, I'm hoping it's against Ryan Garcia, but with the way Gervonta Tank Davis's career has been moved, I won't be surprised if it's a lower level opponent. And what I mean by that is, I've always felt with Gervonta Tank Davis that he's never been in a truly 50-50 risky fight. Say what you want about Devin Haney, you might say, oh, well, he was way better than George Kambosos. I believe that going into the first fight, he would easily outpoint Kambosos, and that's exactly what he did. He won almost every minute of every round. He still pushed for the undisputed fight. You can't blame someone who wins a fight by a huge landslide when it's an undisputed fight. Gervonta Tank Davis doesn't have a real belt. He's the essentially interim champion. He's almost a mandatory to Devin Haney. Though, the fact that Devin Haney is tied up in a top-rank contract almost negates Gervonta Tank Davis's mandatory status, because Devin Haney has to rematch with Kambosos, and based off what Bob Arum has said, he's got to fight with Lomachenko, early next year. Now, does it look like Devin Haney is picking and choosing his opponents? Someone who signed a 3-fight deal with Top Rank, that regardless of if he were to win the first fight against George Kambosos, he would have to rematch him, regardless of the first fight. And that if he were to beat Kambosos, he has to fight Lomachenko. Is Lomachenko an easy fight? Lomachenko is definitely a harder fight than Rolly Romero. When Lomachenko had the WBC World Championship, Devin Haney was pressing Lomachenko and saying, "Let's make the fight happen." Lomachenko ducked Devin Haney and got the WBC franchise title and faked the undisputed fight against Teofimo Lopez. When Teofimo Lopez was unified, Devin Haney, he got into a heated confrontation with Teofimo Lopez, saying that he wanted the fight. When George Kambosos was unified, lightweight champion of the world, Devin Haney was pressing George Kambosos and saying, "Let's make the fight happen. Let's settle all of this and let's make an undisputed lightweight champion of the world." And then he defeated George Kambosos. So Devin Haney was always chasing the people who had the majority of the belts, whereas Tank Davis hasn't really gone for the belts in the same way Devin Haney has. Now, I have one theory why that's the case. When you have the belts, essentially you have a load of mandatories, similar to Anthony Joshua. If you look at Anthony Joshua's run, he had to fight guys like Parker and Alexander Usyk. Those are very, very tough fights. Now, with Devin Haney being the lightweight champion, the undisputed champion, he would have to fight, a load of mandatories. Now, I've said that I think Tank Davis, and TMT, Mayweather Promotions have been very selective with the fighters they've been pairing Tank Davis up with to build himself, I guess you could say, a decent resume, and to build his reputation, his stock, as a formidable fighter. With Tank Davis not having any belts, any real belts, he doesn't have to worry about mandatories. So he can continue to be selective with the fights, or at least, Lennon Ellaby can continue to pair Tank Davis up against decent level opponents, but not elite level opponents, even though Tank Davis is 27 years old. Whereas Devin Haney, having all 4 of the belts in the lightweight division, he actually has to fight mandatories, which means he can't pick and choose his opponents. So there's no way you can say, oh, well, Devin Haney, has had it easy and he's picking his opponents, because he's pushed for the belts, he's undisputed, he got locked up into a, tough contract with Top Rank, and even if, let's say, he beats Lomachenko after, let's say he beats George Kambosos and Lomachenko, he would have to defend his belt against mandatory challenges, which is something Gervonta Tank Davis, never really had to do. Now, some people will say, oh, well, he will have to defend his, his WBA belt. It's not a real belt. And Gervonta Tank Davis is not a real champion at 135-pound division. He is the interim champion. That being said, if Gervonta Tank Davis were to fight someone like a Ryan Garcia in December, then you could argue if he were to beat Ryan Garcia, he would supersede, what the heck am I talking about, supersede? He would supersede Devin Haney's resume, because for me, Ryan Garcia is a very good fighter, and he's got tremendous hand speed. He's also a big puncher. He's got a fantastic left hook, and although he's got some things he doesn't do very well, I would say he's one of the top lightweights. Devin Haney has mentioned several times about, the 135-pound limit and how it's been very, very hard to make. I suspect that if after the Lomachenko fight, I do actually believe that instead of defending his belt and, fighting a bunch of mandatories, Devin Haney will vacate. He won't vacate his belt to duck the 135-pound competitors because he's scared or because he doesn't want to risk losing to them. If he is to beat Lomachenko, I believe that Devin Haney will move up to 140 pounds. I believe Devin Haney has about 2 fights left at the 135-pound weight division. I believe it's against George Kambosos in this rematch, and let's say he wins this rematch, which I do think he'll win very easily, then I believe he'll go on to fight Lomachenko, and then after he fights Lomachenko, win or lose, he will move up in weight and vacate his belts. That's just my prediction, because he said, it's a very hard weight to make, and he can't keep draining himself down to this very, very light weight. See what I did there? Alright guys, those were just my quick thoughts on Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis having a go at each other on social media. What do you guys think in the comment section below? Are you more impressed with Devin Haney or Gervonta Tank Davis? Alright guys, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Peace.